You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to the Dressage Today podcast, sponsored by Purina. In this episode, we are talking to a couple people from the USDF convention that I got to meet. But first, I want to check in on Aviva. Aviva, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing well, but I don't want to talk about me because I know you have some really exciting news that you're dying to share and that I want you to share. So tell us your excitement.
Thank you. I just came back from USDF convention, which was amazing. I really enjoyed it. It's always great to see people I haven't seen in a long time. I did get to do a presentation, which was really cool on virtual learning. But the big news that I couldn't share with you last month is that I have received a training grant from the Dressage Foundation.
That's so exciting. Tell us about it.
I'm going to work with Kathy Connolly, and it's the Major Lindgren Instructors Grant, which is kind of cool because when I started being a trainer full-time, his book, did you ever see his book?
Yes.
The book of exercises for each different level. That was like my little Bible before lessons. So it's kind of, it's cool that it's come full circle that I'm getting this grant from him to get to work with Kathy Connolly.
That's so exciting. Tell us a little bit about the horse you're bringing.
I am taking my beautiful boy, Dante. He is 8. He'll be 9 in March. I've had him since he was a yearling. He was bred here in Florida by a good friend of mine. And he's big and goofy and athletic and sweet and wonderful. And I'm just really looking forward to the ability to have some concentrated eyes on me. You know, I ride a lot by myself. I do some videos of myself and I get to see, you know, Mary Wanless from time to time, people like that. This is going to be concentrated for me. I'm going to go down every 2 weeks and do 2 lessons in a row. I'm going to get to watch Kathy train other people, of upper levels. Yeah, it's really a blessing and a gift. So thank you, the Dressage Foundation. And for anybody who's thinking they need some money, I'm just an average person and I got a grant. So you too could reach out to the Dressage Foundation for a grant. So there you go.
Congratulations. It's
Thank you.
Very, very well deserved. And
thank you.
We are going to want to hear details.
Yeah, I'll keep you guys up to date on this. I have to, as part of the being a grant recipient, you have to keep a little diary. So yeah, I'll have notes. So
will you have video as well?
I will have some video too. Yes, which people don't know. I hate being filmed.
Well, everybody who knows me knows there's no film of me available.
Yeah. It's I never like how I look, or I'm always like, oh, that could be better. But, I think that's every dressage person out there.
That's because we're all a bunch of type A's. Yep.
Yes.
So do you have any specific goals for your time with Kathy? What you'd like to be able to walk away with? Is there a movement? Is there a feel? Is there a something?
I want to get back in the ring with him. I really didn't get to show much the past year and a half. So having somebody who can kind of tidy me up for the show ring. We did do a little bit of third level last year. So I'm, having somebody that can coach me at shows is going to be hugely valuable. I would like to keep moving him towards the Prix St. George. I don't know that we'll accomplish that this season. He's doing a lot of that stuff at home, but it's not necessarily quite show ready. But the other thing, she's so brilliant in handwork. And I've never got to do a ton of training of Piaffe and Passage. Okay. So that's being able to get that started with him beyond just my out in the grass field version is going to be really exciting.
Well, make sure you get a lot of video of that because I'm fascinated by that as well. So
cool. I will share.
Very exciting. And hopefully we can even bring Kathy on and interview her at some point. And she can tell us all the dirt about you and everything.
She is fascinating to talk to. So yes, I'm sure she would be a good person to have. But we've got lots of cool people that I talked to at convention. So let's go and let's get our L question under our belts. Are you ready?
What do we got?
So this one is from Denise. And Denise wants to know from your point of view in the judges booth, how can a rider show a clearer crossover in the leg yield in first level test 2?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, it's interesting when I'm working with riders and we're looking at that. It's a long way.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at going 10 meters over the course of something like 24 meters. So there really isn't very much crossover.
Okay.
If you have too much crossover, you get to the rail too fast. And, you know, depending, you know, that's sort of dressage, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The movement is from letter to letter. So looking at accuracy. So if you do it from letter to letter, there really isn't a lot of crossover. And what I'm looking for is a horse that's standing up, a horse that's straight, a horse that is showing a willingness to adduct and abduct both shoulders and hindquarters, stays soft and supple in the bridle, and isn't falling, is in balance.
Okay.
If you show a lot of crossing, which generally for most people, when you think about crossing, what you think about is the abduction, the leg stepping out as opposed to the leg stepping over. So if you see a lot of that, you're going to get to the rail too soon. Now, how do you score that? On the one hand, you have shown above the expectation of the movement. You have made the movement more difficult. On the other hand, you haven't provided the accuracy, and there is a reason that the tests are written the way that they are. So,
okay.
The chances are pretty good, Denise, that if you are riding a horse that is a really nice, solid first level horse, and you ask for the leg yield and you show a lot of crossover, the chances are pretty good that your horse is not going to be straight, that your horse is not going to be truly balanced, and that your horse is not truly going to be coming over the back. So the answer to how do I show more crossover, you shouldn't. You want to show the amount of crossover, and of course it also depends on how long your horse is, you know, because again, the amount of crossover is determined by the line of travel. It's a long line of travel.
Right.
So, you know, it's sort of like in third level when you start doing those first half passes.
Oh, they take forever.
And they take forever, and there's almost no bend.
Yes.
If you show a lot of bend and you show a lot of crossover, you're making a very steep half pass. And it's not supposed to be a steep half pass because it's an introduction. And leg yield is sort of an exercise more than it is a movement. It is to introduce the idea of lateral movement. It's starting to teach the horse to rock back a little bit because obviously they can't open up an outside hind leg and move sideways if all of their weight is on their forehands. They can fall through the shoulder.
Okay.
And if you're just falling through the shoulder, then you're not straight. So it's also a straightening exercise. And the purpose of the time frame is to demonstrate that you can control how much your horse goes sideways. Because interestingly, for some horses, it's easier to just fly sideways than it is to slowly step over and cross. So that was probably clear as mud.
Well, no, that makes a lot of sense that you're not getting extra points for getting to the rail sooner.
Yeah. There are some, you know, if you do a perfect leg yield, I mean, a really, truly balanced, beautiful, straight, on the aid, soft, supple leg yield, and you get there sooner, then yeah, I'm probably going to reward that, but I'm also going to comment on the fact that you weren't accurate.
Right.
But if you try to make that leg yield steeper, Again, this is the first time that leg yield is introduced. There's a reason that the line is so long. We don't expect a horse to be able to be balanced enough at first two to be able to go 10 meters sideways in 10 meters.
Right.
That's a lot to ask.
Okay.
Of a quote, young first level horse. It's just like in first three, when you do the leg yield off the rail, that is a little bit shorter line. And it's also coming off the rail. And as we know, our horses are Velcroed to the rail. So two is a very inviting test for the horse in that, they make that lovely half circle. There's time to straighten. And now there's time to go sideways without a lot of demand for a lot of lateral crossing. In first three, the demand gets tighter. You have to come through a corner. You have to change your bend and straightness, and then you have to move away from the Velcro and unstitch yourself. And then to make it even harder, you got to make a circle.
Yeah.
At the end of it. So,
yes.
If you read through the tests and you read through the movements, you can see how they are truly developing the horse. They're developing the suppleness. They're developing the understanding of moving sideways. They're developing the understanding of moving off of one leg or moving off of another leg, of starting to bring the weight backwards. So the answer is ride accurately. You're not going to show a lot of crossing. Don't worry about it. And if the judge's comment is, show more crossing, I just sort of question that as the correct comment. It probably, what the judge is saying is show more straightness rather than crossing.
Which allows the legs to look like they're crossing more, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sitting at sea is a really interesting experience. And, I say this every L question, but, go sit at sea. Even if it's not a formal show, just if you have, like, for you to be sitting watching Kathy teach, to maybe sit at sea and watch as she works with riders on some of those exercises, because, seeing it from the perspective of C is very different from seeing it from the perspective of E or K or the middle of the ring. It's very, very different. And it's one of the challenges that makes showing so difficult, because the perspective at sea is not the same as the perspective in other places of the ring. And that's why, at the upper level shows, there are multiple judges.
Right. At regionals, I think we have 2.
Yep.
But then when you go to the big ones, there's how many?
5 to 7.
Wow.
Yeah. Think about it, because and that is why you see the difference in scores as well among those judges, because if you're sitting at C and your rider comes straight down center line and halts, what you see is straightness. If you're sitting at E or at B, what you see is squareness. You can't see square from C. You can only see straightness.
Interesting.
You may, for a lot of people, it's sort of like, well, I did this beautiful halt and the judge at E only gave me a 6. Well, from C, your horse's 4 legs are lined up and it looks like a beautiful halt. But from E, I can see that right hind leg is an entire foot, 12 inches.
Oh, wow.
The other hind foot. But you can't necessarily see that at C.
Interesting.
So, again, sitting at sea is a very interesting and different perspective, and being aware of what the test is truly testing and what the movements are building towards, and understanding that. Read your tests, read, that side that says, this is what the judge is looking for in the movement. It's not just, down center line, X halt, salute, proceed, working trot. Look at what it says about what is the judge looking for, straightness, balance, whatever. And that will help you ride better in the show ring.
Fabulous.
And that's the end of my lecture for the day.
I love it. That was very helpful. And, it gives you good perspective on what you're trying to accomplish versus what the judge is looking for. And the difference in where they're sitting. That's really great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Denise. Well, so we're going to get ready for our interview or to listen to the recordings of the interviews from convention. But first, we have a word from our sponsor.
Confidently address your horse's unique weight needs and help optimize their overall well-being with research-proven Purina animal nutrition feeds designed by passionate equine nutritionists. Partner with Purina to nourish your horse to their optimal body condition. Explore weight management resources for your horse today at purinamills.com/feed-finder.
This is Stephany with the Dressage Today podcast, and I am here with my first victim at the USDF convention. I'm talking with Lindsay Burns. She's from Region 3. She comes from Ball Ground, Georgia. I've actually heard of Ball Ground before. I haven't been there. But welcome, Lindsay. Thanks for talking with us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So tell us a little bit about you, your horse journey, what you do at home.
It's a long story if I do too many details, but I primarily ride dressage. I used to do quite a bit of eventing, but have decided to, reduce my concussion risk if possible. I've also spent a lot of time at the racetrack, galloping horses, grooming, helping train and condition and all of that. I used to do some endurance riding.
Wow.
I've been involved with Pony Club, and before I lived in Georgia, I was involved with the Idaho Dressage and Eventing Association board with the LeBois chapter. And then in between all of that, I snuck in getting a biology degree at Boise State University so I can be an extra nerdy horse trainer.
Super. We love all that. That's great. Tell me about do you have a horse currently that you're training?
I do. I've got he's not so young anymore. He's going to be 7. So I guess I don't know if I can call him a young horse anymore, but he's a really cute, I call him buckskin, technically a line back done. He's got a stripe down his back and stripes on his legs. He's really cute. He's a Andalusian Morgan cross, and I bought him as a 3-year-old. He'd only been sat on like one time. Went up and tried him and loved him. And yeah, he was the Young Horse of the Year for GDCTA in 2022 and 23. And then last year, thank you. Yeah, it was thrilling. He's been so much fun. It's been my first time doing the young horse tests. And so it's been really fun to explore with him. He had a little bit of soundness issues and needed some surgery last year, but he's just coming back into competition really well. We got our first qualifying regional scores for second level, and here pretty soon we'll be working on our flying changes. So extra excited to have sat in with Lilo 4 and her talk about training flying changes. She had lots of good ideas.
Yes, it was a good presentation. I enjoyed that. Not only is she funny, but she's got the judges' standpoint and she's got the trainer standpoint. And I just thought it was a really well put together presentation, her and Sarah Geike.
No, it was a lot of fun. It was accessible, and she was real, laughing about being in the rafters occasionally, and they get exuberant. Yes. So it was very relatable.
Now, you are not currently a PM delegate, which is why a lot of us come to the convention. But this is your first time being at convention?
It is. This is my first time coming. I've kind of always wanted to go, but, this, that, or the other thing, I haven't been. And I am coming in as the VP of Dressage for GDCTA this next year. And when we had one of our last board meetings and we were talking about who was going to convention, all of the ladies with lots more seniority were like, you have to go. It's the best thing ever. You're going to learn so much. And so it wasn't very hard to twist my arm. And I said, sure, let's go. It'll be an adventure. And here I am.
Excellent. And we're in an amazing hotel. We're near the Galleria, so everything's very Tony. Lots of good food around us.
Yes. Yep.
So you're coming in as the VP of Georgia Dressage and Combined Training Association, which is one of the biggest GMOs in Region 3. Region 3 is now, I think, the biggest region of all the dressage regions. So thank you for contributing to that. So besides everybody saying you got to go, what were you thinking you were going to find when you got here?
I knew there would be a lot of educational opportunities, and I was as boring as it can be, but excited to, find out about the inner workings and the rules and the voting that they do and just sort of the nitty-gritty processes behind our sport and what we do. And it's easy to take a lot of things for granted when you're just going down center lines at shows or complaining about rule changes or any of that. And so I think it's important to really see what the thought processes and the different things that go into developing the sport that we all love. And I thought this would be a great way to start that.
Awesome. Excellent. So what have you learned so far? What stands out to you of what we've seen in the past 2 days?
That's a tough one. I feel like it's a little bit of a tidal wave of information at the moment, so I'll have to go home and think about it some more. Today's been really a lot of fun, super interesting. David O'Connor's talk about horse welfare and social license to operate and getting some new lingo to absorb in that direction was really interesting. And I really like the flying change talk. And yesterday there were a lot of changes or talks about different rule changes and all the different committees. I really enjoyed listening to the sport horse one as I do a little bit of breeding and a lot of young horse riding and developing them. I'm excited. I'm going to have a yearling this coming year and I want to join in some of those programs. It'll be my first time doing that. And so it was fun to hear about what they have coming down the pipeline and what they're developing. And then also at the end of the day, there was a talk with a representative and a veterinarian from Adequan and talking about joint disease and prevention and help and maintenance. And it was really cool to get the science behind Adequan. It's been around for forever and ever, but they've changed a couple times, like the best dosing and the ideas behind that. And as a science nerd, I really got into that, and it was fascinating to learn a little bit more about that drug and the whole process of arthritis and our horses' joints. It's something we all deal with every day.
Excellent. Excellent. So what kind of things are you taking home to the club, to your own horse, to your barn? What's sticking with you?
I think really the thing that's been on everybody's minds and has been on my mind a lot is this social license to operate, which is that's a mouthful to say. That's a new word for me, but horse welfare and horse abuse and, all those different things that are flying around all over the internet. We saw it before the Olympics, after the Olympics, I swear every day, and figuring out how best to navigate that. I think that'll really be the biggest thing that I bring home and when I talk about with our club and with my clients and really with my following on social media. I think we really need to take control of our image and what we're putting out there, because if we want to just stick our heads in the sand, the people that are going to put stuff up are the people that are destroying our sport. Your PETA types or what have you that are going to take some tiny snippet and blow it way out of proportion. And yes, there's change needed, and we can always, always, always strive to be better communicators with our horses, better horsemen, and coming up with better training practices. But there's also so much good and good trainers already out there. And so I would love to see people sharing those feel-good stories. Like we have to take control of that image and put out there what we want people to be seen. And if we try to just hide and remove ourselves from the internet in this day and age, that's not really possible. If we want to stay relevant, if we want to stay in the Olympics, if we don't want to get shut down or have Congress come intervene because people say all we do is abuse our horses, it is up to us what we put out there to the world. And there's a lot of really beautiful, wonderful, amazing things happening with horses, and let's start sharing that.
I thought David O'Connor's statement, what was it exactly that he said? Something about if you can't train it in Central Park?
Yes, yeah. If your training practices, if you can't have a training session in Central Park with anybody and everybody seeing you need to change something.
Yes, I thought that was a brilliant way to put it, because it leads all of us to examine, what do I do at home? I think there can always be moments with any horse that if it was taken out of context, it does not look great.
Yes. No, I feel that for sure. Any of us, we're all learning and doing better. There's probably times in the past we wish we'd done something a little different, and they're big, giant animals, and something taken out of context really can be construed, even when your intentions are good.
Yes.
But again, we can keep doing better. We can keep re-examining that.
And I think if we can explain what was going on, not defend,
exactly,
but explain what was going on and what it led to.
Educate the public.
Absolutely.
And kind of take control of it instead of being on that back foot and trying to play catch up. Just step out and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Do you guys want to come see this? Inviting them in, because the more people understand, and this is something too, from discipline to discipline, sport to sport, I think is so important, because as David pointed out, the public puts all horses into one category. It doesn't matter if it's racing, dressage, reining, saddlebreds, I mean, all of it. And if we are going to survive, if we are going to keep horses as this amazing adventure with sport that we all so enjoy and are passionate about, we've got to come together. And the biggest thing, I think, is being willing to learn about other disciplines, other sports, because we have a lot of infighting. And, you know, oh, those people over there do this and those people over there do that. And having been in several different sports and arenas myself, the more you understand, the more you get educated about these different sports, you start to realize, like, okay, there might be some not so good trainers, you know, in each one, but overall, most people out there are really wanting to promote the horses and do well by them. So if we can work on coming together, again, that's going to help us give a better image to the public and keep our sport alive and well.
Very well said. Would you encourage others to come to convention next year? Next year, it's going to be in Kentucky, so it's going to be at the home base. But would you, having come and met people, would you encourage people that have thought about it and just haven't taken that step to come and join us?
Oh, definitely. I think any opportunity to further your education and get involved on the ground floor of how rules are made and how ideas come to fruition, like, you've got to jump on it. And they were talking yesterday about having part of it at like the USDF headquarters, and they have an archive of photos and all sorts. It sounded fascinating. And so it'd be another just great way to be connected with all of our peers. So definitely should come up.
Excellent. Lindsay, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you for the rest of the convention.
Super. Thank you so much for having me.
I am here with Rosa Meehan and Hilary Starzynski. Rosa is the president, and Hilary is the vice president of Alaska Dressage Association. These ladies came to Houston from Alaska, and I have to say they've been a little bit of a celebrity pair because everybody's so blown away that they came this far for convention. So ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for sitting down with me. I just think this is going to be so cool. How many people are in your GMO, do we know?
We have, I think, 64, and real close to that, and that's been a pretty steady membership.
Okay.
We are a statewide organization, and we have members in Fairbanks, and we also have members down in Homer. And so it's
12-hour drives?
Yeah.
Wow.
Those two places?
Between those two places.
Wow.
So when people from Fairbanks come down to show, they're hauling down, it's an 8-hour plus 8 to 10 hour drive down. And the Homer folks, it's about 5.
Okay. So you've got we knew that you had to be pretty dedicated to do dressage in Alaska, but now we have an even better idea of that. What made you girls come down here? What made you decide, hey, we're going to go to convention?
It was it was a little bit of a fluke. I was nominated for and received an award as a Volunteer of the Year for Region 6.
Congratulations.
And which was very surprising, but I appreciate it. And Hilary was the one that said, we should do this. And it was like, okay.
Good for you. Good for you for
I'll
encouraging.
drop the money if you want to go.
That's great. Now, do you get out of Alaska often?
I do.
Okay.
Just for various reasons. I'm retired now, so we travel a bit.
There you go.
And enjoy doing that. But Alaska's my home. I'm happy to be there.
Excellent.
A couple times a year to visit family or have them visit us, but probably no more than twice a year would I be out of state.
Okay. What stuck out to you here at convention so far? Things that some of the presentations, or we did a lot of admin stuff. We started our Board of Governors meeting today. What's the thing that's sticking out to you the most that you're going to take home to your GMO?
I've really enjoyed the virtual learning tools, things that have been on the market, like the Pivo and the different features like that. But how to actually use that as a tool to help you learn rather than just a tool to record your ride. Like, how can we bring an instructor into that to make it beneficial, to improve?
Cool.
Being that far away, that's something that's hard for us. And so using those types of tools is essential for our community to grow and learn.
Excellent.
And I appreciate the various contacts, both in terms of individuals that could help us out or have ideas, but also the learning about some of the other supports that are out there and getting a much better idea of the types of grants that are available. That's really been eye-opening. And in theory, you can find all this stuff online, but it's much different to get down where there's actually the people that, oh yeah, we run these funds, we have these sorts of things. That's super helpful. And it's also helpful to be able to talk to other small GMOs and get ideas of, well, how do you do these sorts of things? So sharing tips and ideas, it's sort of standard things that one would get at a conference. It doesn't matter what the discipline. You network and learn how to do things. But I do think that it's really helpful in the horse world to come and do this, because we do tend to be, just due to the discipline and the amount of time and effort you put into it, we tend to get isolated.
Yes.
And you get drawn into, you're doing your own barn thing and you're making sure your horse is okay, and you'd get your ride time in, and oh my God, I'm married, and so I better go spend some time with my husband. If we just don't, it's hard to really truly reach out and research all the potential opportunities. So coming down here and getting sort of the fire hose of information is really helpful.
Excellent.
And on that note, I've found that because in Alaska, we are isolated. And then coming here and seeing that we're not alone in that. There are other small GMOs or people who are newer to dressage that don't have the type of like big barn learning experience, that we are all on a very similar page.
Yes. And I think the thing to remember in dressage, we see the people going to the Olympics. We talk, we can always hear in Chronicle of the Horse or Dressage Today about what the big guys are doing. But that's still a very, very small percentage of the people who are actually riding dressage and out there doing their thing every day. So you are not alone. You're just far away. So let's talk about what dressage is like and horse keeping is like in Alaska. How many shows do you have a year?
We run 4 sanctioned shows a year, and we get S judges for them because we have enough riders that are interested in achieving the national rankings. And so we do provide that. I did want to mention that the Dressage Association has been around 45 years. And
wow.
It was started by people who are very dedicated to the sport, came up and saw that, yes, people were riding dressage, but it wasn't as organized as it could be. And so they started the Dressage Association and have dedicated the association, and the mission statement includes an education component as well as providing opportunities for people to show. So that's a really important part of our mission.
Excellent.
And that's the part it's the education part that I'm really appreciating learning about and taking back these resources to our folks that, hey, look, here's other ways you can learn things. You can do Dressage University. There's just a whole lot of things that people can do that will be of interest for people whether or not they show.
Yes. And I do think people miss that side of USDF. They miss out on that because I think the focus of the world has become more about showing. But USDF was started as an educational organization. And I think David O'Connor talked about this today. under the USCF umbrella, I believe it's the only one of the sub-organizations that really, that's the bigger picture. So that's a pretty exciting thing for us to be part of, is that yes, we love to show, but we also are all horse nerds, and we want to have this avenue of information, and it's there for a membership fee. It's there. And realistically, the membership fee is not that great, especially for you guys being in an area where it's hard to get other kinds of information coming in. So that's great.
And a comment that I got on it, and one reason that I stuck with dressage is I like to trail ride. I mean, that's sort of but I was riding because in the winter I was riding indoors, and the trainer was one of the ladies that started ADA, and I said, well, why should I learn dressage? And she said, don't you want to be relaxed round and forward when you're on the trail? I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I would be, So but it's that kind of a connection that has certainly maintained my interest. And I don't think I'm the only one.
Right.
That it's
right.
That having the dressage and the tool, just the whole thing helps you be a better rider overall.
Absolutely. Harmony and organization is harmony and organization, whether you're on a trail or you're in a little rectangular arena.
Yep,
definitely.
And I'll tell you, a trail ride in Alaska, sometimes you need harmony and organization.
Do you have stick bear spray?
You look between your horse's ears, and what you see are other fuzzy ears. You've got a problem.
Oh my!
Moose, bear,
coyotes.
It's all possible.
It's all part of the
game.
Hopefully
wow.
not, but it's
a possibility. Yeah, it's different than me running into a little deer in Florida and going, oh, look, it's a deer. You're like, oh, it's an elk. We need to go.
Don't charge me, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
But you have snakes to run into.
We just ride over them. What's your season? What's your riding season like?
I ride year round.
Okay.
But
do you have an indoor?
Nope.
Okay.
And I looked. I've been at barns where I've had an indoor, then I didn't have an indoor, then I was back in an indoor, and now I don't have an indoor. So I've, over a 30-year period, I've done it all. And what I found when I looked back at my journal was even when I had an indoor, I rode outside more often.
Interesting.
And it's because I like to trail ride.
Okay.
And so we just get out, and the horse can get out and move. And it just feels good. It feels good for everybody. Yeah, that works as long as it's not too cold.
Is there a temperature at which you won't ride below? Or is it more about, like, if it's snowing? What's the deciding line there?
If you can maintain your own warmth, if you're walking, I would say there's not a temperature that you couldn't go.
Okay.
Usually when it's really cold, it's very still. So you're not having to deal with wind gusts at the same time. If it's below 10, I think trotting is not really recommended.
Because of the breathing, not because of the feet, but the breathing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then always when it's cold, making sure that your horse is not getting sweaty. They have grown their coat, they're dressed for it to be 10 or 0 or whatever. And so making sure that you're not putting them into a position where, okay, now you're back out there and you're all sweaty. That's a problem.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to me about the dangers of sweaty horses in really cold temperatures.
Yeah, when you're putting a horse who's had a great workout, if you just stick them out there, you can have literal ice forming on their bodies. Not a horse story, but my husband and I went and cut down a Christmas tree one year, and it was, I believe it was -16 where we ended up. At that temperature, your breath, the humidity in your breath is freezing on your eyelashes, your hair, instantly. And so, like, any situation where it's that cold, you can't put the horse in a position where they need to melt to be okay, because
They simply can't.
melting is a very long time away.
Okay.
So you have to be very cautious, if you are doing trot or canter work, keeping it short and cooling off in between so that you're not getting them past that temperature point where they're putting enough effort that they're sweating.
It's particularly important for horses that have a heavy coat. And there are ways to manage it up there. There are indoor barns.
Okay.
Some of them have the stalls inside and are heated. And heated means it's up above freezing.
Right.
But it's like 45 is a heated
Warm.
barn.
It's a fancy barn.
That's a fancy barn right there. It's actually easier for the horses to live in a cold barn because of the change you can get between going inside and going outside.
Yes.
So it is easier to maintain a horse in a cold barn. And so horses that have a real heavy coat and get sweaty is a real challenge because it's like wearing a wet sweater. And so if you think about wearing a wet sweater and you walk out and it's really bloody freezing, you're going to get really cold. You're going to turn into an ice cube.
Right.
So it's a matter of drying them off and throwing sheets on them and stuff like that.
And we do a lot of clipping.
There's a lot of clipping.
So you do clip.
If you have,
Okay.
if you have an indoor facility,
you pretty much have to clip.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're going to ride indoors. And that's the other part of it. There are a few barns up our way that are set up so that you can ride year round indoors. They're kept warm enough so the footing doesn't freeze. That's the big deal. And so they'll go ahead and do a regular workout with the horses. So what they'll do is do not quite a full body clip, but something really close to that.
Okay.
And then throw heavy blankets on them. And like really heavy blankets. So you think of how we joke about wearing down coats, puffy down coats. Imagine that on a horse. Well, they've got blankets like that.
Right.
And so you have these horses kind of waddling around in these giant things.
Looking like the Michelin Man.
Yeah, but they're warm. So
Interesting.
So there's ways to manage it, but it is something that you always have to think about and do. The other thing that happens, really important things for cold management, is make sure the horses get enough food. Because as we all know, horses create heat with digestion. So if they have food in front of them, they pretty much will stay warm. So enough food is critical. And then they also have to have water. And I don't know how many people have horror stories about water freezing or trying to keep water from freezing and stuff. That's always the topic of conversation is water management.
Interesting.
So those are things that we really pay attention to. And that's part of what's expensive about keeping a horse up there, because the vast majority of hay is shipped in. There is hay grown in Alaska, but it's got really high sugar content.
Okay.
And so people have to be really careful feeding that. And then, obviously any grain and stuff like that is shipped in. So feed is expensive.
Okay. And hay is expensive.
Hay is expensive.
Yeah, I'm sure.
and so if that's your method to keep your horse warm, you can't limit that.
Right. That is not a choice.
There are times where it's cold enough that your horse really should have unlimited.
You just need to throw food in front of them. We do end up with some pretty round horses by the end of the winter. It's really amazing because everybody's like, oh my God, my horse is going to be cold. They give them food. And then they come out, but they're not riding much because it can be limited on the riding. And so in the spring you have these rather rotund horses that are like, oh, Jesus, now I've got to get them in shape. And so it is a seasonal challenge that way. And so in terms of if anybody's really trying to compete in dressage and be ready for our first show, which is in June, that's the second weekend in June.
Okay.
They don't really have a lot of time to get in shape and get their skills back on point to ride a test because the ground's not going to be ready to ride outdoors until mid-May-ish.
Okay.
And so if you're working in an outdoor facility, that's your limitation.
Right.
Now, I have ridden, and we've got some of our good riders are in places that just have outdoor arenas. They keep them plowed, and so they can work in the arena in the winter.
Okay.
But you're not practicing tempi changes. You're doing a lot of work at a walk, and you're doing a lot of lateral work at slower speeds.
Okay.
And maintaining skills that way.
Interesting.
So you have to really be clever about how you set up a working program with your horse to maintain some level of fitness and a skill level, not only for you, but for the horse and for you.
Right. How to keep moving them ahead with that short of a time.
And mind you that if you're riding outdoors and it's cold, you're not wearing one layer of breeches. You're wearing a lot more clothing than that. And you're wearing different stuff on your hands. So I ride either in mittens or in really big gloves.
Oh.
And so there's no fine tuning on the reins. I mean, it's just not there. And so there's not a lot of discussion between your seat and the saddle because you've got a lot of bulk.
You've got
here.
several layers between you.
So it's, the communication with a horse is different because of all of the winter stuff.
Interesting. Tell me a little more about your shows. So you have 4 recognized shows, which that's great. I mean, that's big for any area. They start in June and they go till
June, July, August. It's the second weekend of those months.
Okay.
And that schedule has been set for 30 plus years.
Okay.
And the focus on doing that comes from the people who established the club, and there's always been a core group of people that really wanted to be able to ride and be recognized within the national system. Our first gold medal rider in Alaska was born in Alaska and grew up riding saddlebreds and then got into dressage, and she trained herself.
Wow.
And she did it using a lot of remote tools and looking things up, riding with clinicians whenever she could, but very much self-taught.
Interesting.
And completed that medal in Alaska.
That's awesome.
And completed the medal in Alaska.
That is awesome.
We now have several medal riders and I think 2 or 3 years ago, we had 6 FEI riders.
Wow.
It was utterly phenomenal. I couldn't believe it.
Is it hard to get judges to come?
It's tricky.
Okay.
The flight is long. It costs more in general. It also costs more because every other person wants to come to Alaska in the summer. So
Okay.
flights are really expensive.
Okay.
And so we primarily target people West Coast or north part of the country so that we're not flying them from Florida.
Okay.
We have done that, but
They prefer not to. They prefer not to. It's
a long
12
flight.
hours of flying
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
But that is a little bit of a challenge. Since our July show is a 2-day, 1-day weekend.
Okay, so you
2-day
get 2
and then
qualifiers
one.
in there.
So then we're flying up 2 judges in a 3-day period in a time of year where it's easily $1,000 round trip, if not
that's
double
actually
that.
a good ticket.
Yes.
Wow.
It can
That time of year.
be double that depending on travel. So it's any time where we have to bring up another TD or judge, it hits the pocketbook.
Does that make going to the show, the costs of the show, more expensive, or does your club try to absorb some of that for the riders?
We're trying to get the shows to pay for themselves.
Okay.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
And this expense of the officials is a significant part of the cost. In terms of people wanting to come up and be officials, that's generally not a problem. People do want to come up and are happy to. And we've had judges and officials that are just super to work with. Peter's come up and been a TD for us, and he always gets his ticket on miles, so we don't pay his ticket. There's another lady who comes up, Carol Spangler, and it turns out she and I were chatting, and I just like, oh, where did you grow up? That's the game we always play up here. And I said, well, I grew up near Pasadena. And she goes, oh, where? And I said, well, Arcadia. And she goes, well, I grew up in Arcadia. You're kidding. Where in Arcadia? We grew up a block apart.
Oh,
We're
my gosh.
1 year apart in age, didn't know each other. But it was like, are you kidding me? So it's a small world, and there's just fun connections to be made. My point in all of that is that people do want to come up. They're interested in our club. They want to help, and that's really fabulous. And people have been very generous in coming up and doing clinics after the shows.
Oh, nice.
And that's something that people enjoy, and has been a resource that we've been able to take advantage of.
Excellent.
And we're always willing to send people our sightseeing itinerary.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, it's got to be lots to see. It absolutely does.
Even have to deliver moose for some of these guys. I want to see moose. Okay, let's walk here.
We'll go around the corner. It'll be right there, I promise. Dressage people, are they tougher up there? Are they more resilient? Are they just as fluffy as dressage riders elsewhere? What are your dressage people like?
I would say we've got all types, and we do have one of my favorite all-time images is the Pony Club from Homer came up. They were having a rally, and right before our show, and so they stayed and participated in the show. Well, it happened to be one of the days that we had this utter monsoon, move through the area, and so we were out there in the pouring rain, and with the wind behind it, and the girls from Homer were hilarious because they're on their ponies. And the ponies are just like, oh, we know this weather. And they just stood there with their tails, their backs to the wind. And the girls were sitting there watching the people riding. Oh, yeah, they have to turn here now. And then they go there. Okay, here we go. I mean, it was just like, the weather was like not an issue for them. They just were there and doing it. There was a Warmblood in the arena, the Sue Muse horse, and she was riding 4th level at least. And her horse kind of got into the corner down by the judge's booth, and it was a puddle, and it was also a gust of wind. And he just stopped, turned his tail in the wind, waited until the wind went away, and then continued on the test.
Oh my gosh!
So
they couldn't ring the bell on her, could they?
No,
because she was still in her pattern.
Yeah,
that's
she was
awesome.
in her pattern. Just stopped.
She probably wouldn't have been able to hear the bell.
Yeah, probably not.
Too windy.
So we'd have people that just sort of roll with the issues, but we also have there are some people that are complete princesses as well, and so we've had people that have had a test kind of fall apart, and it's like, oh, it's their fault or their, so it's like, okay.
So it's the gamut of dressage riders,
it's
just like
across the board.
Okay.
But the one comment that has stuck with me and really warmed my heart was we have had some of the hunter jumper people will come to our shows once in a while and ride with us. And we had some issue going on, and everybody's like, well, we can just figure, and so everybody that was there jumped up to help, and we're moving equipment around or something. And the people from the hunter jumper world looked at us and go, oh my God, you guys are all so supportive. This is fabulous. And it was like, oh, well, it was really nice because, when you're in the middle of it, it's kind of hard to evaluate what's going on. But here was somebody from the outside coming in saying, God, you guys look like a really cool group. And that was a wonderful reminder of, whenever I get
why am I doing this?
I manage the shows, and whenever I get frustrated, it's like, nope, halt, and remember that really everybody does pretty much pitch in and help, and it's a good group.
That's great.
I think part of that is that because it's, again, isolated and the weather is difficult, it builds a camaraderie that I think you don't have in other places necessarily, because you really are, in winter especially, like, you're all struggling through the season together.
Right.
Like, very few people are unaffected by that.
Right.
And so while you do have, the people that show up in their muck boots that they wear all the time, that you have the ladies with the fancy hats that look very nice.
But I don't understand how they managed to pull it off.
I can never.
There are just people that are never
I can never stay looking like that. But we're all having to deal with this extreme environment together, and that does change the way we interact, I think.
It builds a bond because it's like, damn it, I made it through that, and
Yes.
and everybody has a winter story of, oh yeah, you wouldn't believe the ice in my driveway. I couldn't get my car out. My trailer slid off the road. I mean, everybody has a story, and then so and so came and helped me fix it and do this, and that's a real solid bond between everyone. And the challenges that we face are it's not just that it's cold for a long time and that we have a lot of snow. I mean, a lot of people like snow. You get out and go skiing and playing, and it's beautiful. But it's also dark up there for a long time. And in the middle of the winter, the sun is above the horizon for 5.5 hours.
Oh.
And that's it. There's twilight on either side of it, but it is dark a lot. And there is a seasonal affective disorder. It's well recognized. And it's very common that to just get down, particularly in the fall, as you start to lose light. And so that's another underlying issue that we deal with.
Right. Do you think that affects the horses as well? Or do you think that they go into more of a little hibernating state? I mean, I know horses don't hibernate, but do you think there's a change for them?
I watch the horses at our barn, and I don't think so.
Okay.
It's more that as long as the horses are comfortable, they seem to be fine.
Okay.
Now, there are some horses that just can't handle the weather or the stress or whatever. And I would say thoroughbreds are one of the breeds I wouldn't necessarily want to bring up there.
Okay.
Although there's lots of thoroughbreds up there. But I have seen some that just don't do well. That being said, every place I've been around horses, there's always some horse that just doesn't thrive in that particular environment.
Sure.
But there are horses that are better suited for being up north.
Okay.
And for our sport, the warm bloods seem to do okay.
Yeah.
They tend to be they're kind of hunks. And they do fine. There's a lot of Icelandic horses up our way. They are fantastic in the weather. They don't care.
Yes.
You definitely have less fine boned
Arabian.
I mean, there's maybe a couple, but there's
an Arabian breed around the valley.
But it's
interesting.
That is more tricky.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, I think, you see a definite change in coat with the change in the sun exposure. And usually you're freaking out about it because it's January and your horse is shedding. You're like, it is way too early to be shedding. or vice versa in September. It's no,
don't start growing that coat.
It's it's still summer, right? No, it's not. But
Interesting.
the temperature is definitely hard on joints and arthritis.
Yes.
Obviously, that's a problem. But that's really what I see and have been affected more in my riding is, hey, old lady horse, this is too cold for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I was thinking horses that have underlying conditions really don't do well. We've had I've known a couple of horses that have had laminitis in their past, and then they get up there and they just can't do it.
Yeah.
You don't go into winter with a horse who's having health issues.
Yeah.
Because
if they're compromised,
they won't make it
it's
through.
not good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure to be able to deal with that level of extremities in the weather, you've got to have your health 100% behind you as an outdoor animal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ladies, having been here, would you want to come back? Are you going to come back to convention again? Have you found that it's valid? It's helpful.
There's definite value.
Yeah. This is
I'm more of an introvert, and so any time where it's go network and talk to these people. It's but you can't understand what you gain from this type of experience if you don't go.
Okay.
Someone talking about it, you're whatever. But being here, there's the connection, the things they're talking about. And it's relevant to all of us. And then you don't have that on your daily
Dressage
basis. And while like something like this for like my profession, it's like, yeah, I don't think I'd want to. That sounds kind of boring, but for this hobby we call life, it's like, let's do it.
Okay. So you would recommend to other people that have not been to convention that it's worth putting the effort in, it's worth showing up and finding out what this is all about.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for your time. This has been wonderful. Really enjoyed this.
I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of our world.
Yes. Yes. Dressage in Alaska is very different than dressage in Florida. And I'm sure that Aviva will say it's very different than dressage in Maryland as well.
We call it dressage in the last frontier.
I love that. Dressage in the last frontier. Thank you, ladies.